Oh, hello everyone. So now we're live. So let's share this so we could reach as much people as we want and as much countries and even to the boondocks if internet is available. Okay, so let's go ahead and share it. So this is our Powwow Podcasters United too. So let's see what happens. And guys, our listeners and viewers, hang on there. You can do the same for us and help us share. Okay, I found it. I found myself. I share it to my group. So yes, you could share it to different groups and then share it to different pages until it tells you that maybe you can't share anymore. But right now, we're having all our massive cloud infinite help page there, page. And yes, people can find us also in Quantum Nurse YouTube, and that's just the beginning. And from my platform, please share it to other YouTube platforms. Okay, and I will continue to share as much as what I can. And my main role is to just keep monitoring all the questions, comments, and conversations. That will be my main role. So I'll get myself busy looking at the comments and people sharing because I want this just like last week. We want it to be engaging with the listeners and viewers. Okay. All right. So, anyway, welcome to us, and welcome to all out there, listeners and viewers. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. God bless all of us. Power be with us. And I'm always inspired by sharing quotes. And now I have three quotes. Last week I had two. So one is my favorite, is Rumi, and he wrote, um, raise your words, not your voice. It's the rain that waters the flowers, not the thunders. So raise your words, not your voice. It's the rain that waters the flowers, not the thunder. And then from the African proverb, it says, truth is like fire. You cannot hide it under dry leaves. Truth is like fire, you cannot hide it under dried leaves. And the third one is for that resonates especially for Christians. I always remember elders saying, truth crushed to earth shall rise again. Truth crushed to earth shall rise again. And that's William Collett Bryant. So, anyway, to all you listeners and viewers, if you feel like sharing any code to us that keeps us inspired, then feel free, share with us. And we may have some little tech problem right now. I think Steve disappeared, but Steve will catch up. He'll be there. So I we have six of us: myself, Grace, Harmut, Celeste, Steve, Chris, and Roy. And I'm doing the sequence of saying the names from my view, but each of us will have different views, and that's a wonderful world because we have so many different views, and all we have to do is be free to share and inspire each other with different views because we live in a multi-dimensional situation realities and we're feeling it. So let me start, and thank you guys. Okay, all right. Welcome. And now I'll start by just reading to you a little bit of who Celeste is. Celeste Bishop Solum is our main is presenter today, and with us we'll have a great conversation with Celeste. So, Celeste, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be
Celeste,
here. Thanks for inviting me, Grace.
it's a collaborative invitation from all of us. So I'm just one of the conduits, and I listen to all the messengers and messages, and that's what makes me keep thriving or doing what I'm doing, because I just open myself to invitations. So, Celeste, throughout history, God has called certain women of God to step out from their household into global stage of history. And Celeste, you became a Christian because of World War II, when your family left their faith just in case there was another Holocaust. Providentially, you were invited by a neighbor to go to Vacation Bible School, where you promptly confessed your sin and accepted Jesus as your personal savior. You were born for such a difficult time like this, and God strategically and gently placed you in careers, events, and situations that are now converging during this end times. And Celeste, you have maintained your strong faith by continual study from the primary languages and concepts of the Bible. You actively explore the depths of faith. Okay, sorry. Oh, I thought Steve was ready. Steps of faith, and you are an active prayer warrior, skilled in spiritual warfare. But you grew up in a military and governmental home with your father working for the Naval Warfare Center and managing public lands in Washington State in, and California. You work for the government. Your training and activations include the infamous day of 9/11, flood and earthquake operations, mass casualty exercises, and numerous other operations. So, your education and experience in nursing, pediatrics, dentistry, environmental medicine, and alternative medicinal remedies are extensive. So, and ever since I know you, and from what I've read, you have prepped all your life, learned and actively engages in the art of prepping, including all aspects of agriculture. So I enjoy it, Celeste, when we have a conversation on Skype and we talk about what you're planting, what you're canning, and all about agriculture. So, but one thing I also admire of you, Celeste, is you go into places where angels fear to tread to bring you the most relevant and practical news and information that you need to make wise decisions during these perilous times. And and then from here, I'll just let you talk more about what you've been doing. Okay, Celeste? So thanks again.
So this year has been really busy. It was for all of us. Lots of changes in the wind. I guess I'll start off by saying, as soon as I saw the um, the pathogen, we'll just say the pathogen breaking in China due to my training, I did know it would go global. There were certain things that I did, and one of those is that the patient um, records were online, and I knew that those would quickly disappear once the World Health Organization got boots on the ground. So I grabbed those patient records that were on the line. I did translate those, and that was really interesting read to find out what was going on with these patients. And then I also took personal preparations, and well, everybody was like doing Christmas last year, a year ago, right now. People were going to the different stores preparing for Christmas. And I had my basket filled with meat because we all have certain weaknesses in our preparedness. And mine, because my husband was killed 4 years ago, was meat before he was a hunter, and I had meat on tap. What. So that was my vulnerability. And quite frankly, we need protein in our bodies to be healthy. Um, you can get proteins many different ways, but in my particular body and that I uniquely have, I do need animal protein. So I started stocking up and I have been canning up a storm. I've never canned so much in my own life. And basically, I live here in the Rocky Mountains. Um, with my little golden retriever, Miss Zippy. And I am on the front lines of the news. You probably know that already. And I do go to places because of my training. I'm aware of certain things. I talk their language. And then what I try to do is educate everyone around the world how to read the language that I know and break very technical things down to a basic level so that the average person can understand. But I do also have a large audience of people that like in depth. So I think what you need to know is if you would like to follow my work, censorship is getting like the name of the game these days. So I do have a censorship free platform, and you can join me at celestialreport.com to follow my videos. You can go to shepherdsheart.life, and that's where you'll find my articles. I haven't done so many articles recently, like in the last month or two, because I had to do a platform change because of censorship. You know, it's hit or miss. I just had a large interview with David Icke with some breaking news. And after that, I got some retaliation by the powers that be. So they unleashed omnivore on me. And what is omnivore? So it is a more sophisticated surveillance and censorship program than carnivore. And it goes across platforms. Basically, it shuts down all your communications, all my communications from my phone to my internet to my social media to my emails were shut down for 10 days, and they are just now starting to come back. And if I would have lived, let's say, in the city, omnivore is across the platform. So I would not have been able to get medical help. I would not have been able to use a credit card. That is what omnivore does. It goes out into every facet of your life. If you've seen the movie The Last Enemy about total information awareness, it's an older movie, but it's very well done. It is fictional, but not fictional. And so I got to experience a little bit of what it's like to be shut out of the system that we are opposing. And I do oppose it. I am a grandmother of many grandchildren, and I am banned for life from buying groceries in the area that I live because I refuse to wear a mask. My position right now is that masks I did a word study on masks, and they, in the Bible, they are linked to spiritual adultery, lawlessness, and wickedness, no exception. There were no positives about wearing a mask. And I go, well, that's interesting. So then there's the physiological effects. But, for me, spiritual is the most important. Secondarily, would be the physical. And then, of course, I refuse to be tested. That's going to be an increasing problem. We'll go into why I refuse to test in probably in this discussion. And then, of course, I am a fierce anti-vaxxer. Now, how did I get there? So back, I think it was in the 80s, I went to my GP and he was dogging me about getting a booster for my DPT shot, and it was before cell phones. And so finally, to get him off my back, because you go in there and every time they're like, vax, 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 booster, booster, booster. Finally, just get him off my back. I did it. It wasn't very far from the office to my car. It was a very small clinic. It was a one doctor operation. And by the time I got to the car, I was having hundreds of seizures. And I knew that it was directly as a result of that vaccination because I was fine. I mean, I had no problem. And then all of a sudden, I could not even get out of the car. I couldn't call anybody because I was having hundreds of seizures. And it was before cell phones. So I just sat there. I was actually supposed to be going, I was going to leave the office and go read to a woman who was dying of brain cancer. And after I got out of maybe 4 hours of seizures, um, it left me really confused. Here is a town I live in. I know the way. I'm a good driver. And yeah, I could barely get to her house. And I did get there, but I was very late. And I did read scripture to her. So that's when I realized that vaccines were dangerous. And after that, I did not ever have another vaccination. Now we have a whole different generation um, of vaccinations, and I'm sure that we're going to get into that discussion. So I guess I'll break for a few minutes, and if any of the panel has any questions, we can start the discussion.
Thank you, Celeste. Before we continue, if any of us have something open, let's try to keep all the volumes off because I could still hear a little bit of like echoing, okay? Because your voice is extremely important. Your presence needs to be really manifested to other people. So go ahead. Thank you. And then and if anyone who was going to speak first, just introduce yourself and tell the audience about and so Celeste can get to know you more as well.
Well, I guess I'll start. My name is Chris, Irish, obviously just living in London at the moment. My podcast is called MINDWARS, and it's basically, in a nutshell, uncovering corruption in many forms. It's basically unveiling agendas about against humanity that have been going on for decades, hundreds of years. So basically talk about all the areas. I'll get people on that are censored because generally they have lots of good stories to actually tell. There's a reason Silicon Valley are censoring, and to give them a platform and a voice that they can raise awareness to actually what's going on around the world as well. So obviously COVID being the big topic at the moment and what a scam it is and all that kind of stuff. So I'm getting loads of factual, loads of truth tellers, loads of people on board to give their stories and their views worldwide. I'll also go into stuff that anything the media, of course, and governments want to suppress or hide from you, I'll go scampering, looking for it. So I've been awake for the best part of 15 years. So when COVID came in, it was just, I smelled the rat straight away. And I knew what was pretty much happening. So between the New World Order, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, we can talk about those all day long. All that has been on for decades, United Nations. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, really, without elaborating even any more, you can kind of get the sentiment of what my podcast is about in itself. But what I want to ask, I mean, I've loads of questions to ask Celeste. I mean, things gone by, but I think probably what's more, I mean, I want to get onto stuff like loads of people know about 201, Event 201. Not as many I feel know about Clade X, Event 202, stuff like that, which we might go into as the conversation progresses. But what I'd like to start, which is very relevant as well, which you've just touched on in your intro, Celeste, is the likes of we're all talking about the vaccines, and me being in England at the moment, of course, Pfizer has just been, unfortunately, England being one of the first countries in the world to say, yeah, there we go, roll ahead, so on and so on. And of course, Bill Gates' fingerprints all over everything, as we well know by now. But what I want to ask before we get into the vaccine part of it is the testing itself, i.e. say the masks, which I know you've talked in previous conversations about, is about the hydrogel in the mask moving forward as well. But the also is the magnetic beacon. If you could go into areas like that, I think it's actually quite fascinating, and not many people are aware of that kind of area. And I know you go through it in good detail. So the testing, because a lot of people I talk to that are on the fence as well, they're kind of saying, well, maybe I'll get the test, that's okay, just see if I have it or don't have it, even though I'm telling them by no scientist or government has ever proved to exist this alleged virus. So they say, well, I'm not going to get a vaccine, but look, I'll get the test and I'll get this. I said, no, do not get the test, do not comply, do not get masked, do not do any of it, I said. So I suppose the question is, could you start the conversation, which would probably open a can of worms for other people on the panel as well to ask questions going forward, i.e. starting on with the masks related to hydrogel and all that moving forward, and the magnetic beacon regards the testing system moving on as well.
Okay, so yes, I believe that the final iteration for the mask will include hydrogel, and we'll get into my spiel on hydrogel probably when we talk about the vaccination. But every time you breathe in, then you will be getting dosed. So that's what you need to remember about the masks. Um, so it will be changing from, do it yourself masks to a global um, mandated type of mask. Um, so then with the testing, there are three dangers that I see right now. Now you need to understand every day I get scientific journals in my inbox, and but I get two big downloads of journals on Wednesdays and Sundays. So I am learning new things. I do not bring information like if there's a study by it's just one study by a group of scientists or researchers. I don't bring that to the public awareness because maybe they got a grant, maybe they knew somebody, whatever. I don't feel that it's important. But when I see hundreds and thousands on one topic, then it's time to do a breaking news story. Now that's when I discovered about the magnetic tagging, and as soon it was in my inbox. Actually, that wasn't part of my scientific journals, but I saw it on in my inbox, and I go, "Oh my gosh," because so I'm going to back up a little bit. So the precursor of the mark of the beast was introduced from the United Nations to the nations of the world on Halloween 2005. It was originally called the National Animal Identification System. It had three pillars. One pillar was everything belongs to the government. Two, everything needs to be electronically identified. And three, 24/7 surveillance. A core of us across the states were fighting it, and I believe different countries also fought it. But because it was an agenda whose time had come, we were unsuccessful. It did become mandatory in the United States. The program, they changed the name because there was so much public awareness. We were in all the media. Um, and so now the program is called Traceability, and it does have all these things. So I became an official lobbyist because if you become an official lobbyist, nobody was paying I paid for my own lobbying, nobody else. And my business partner could attest to that, but unfortunately, she is now with the Lord. But what I found out at that time is Rockefeller had started a program at the same time to barcode all life on Earth. And, he started with insects and butterflies and this and that. And it was really off the scope of different people. So if you have watched my recent David Icke video, I actually walk you through the different locations that you can find documentation about this barcode program. And it was because it was part of the plan that every single biological thing had to be barcode. And then basically you are owned. And then we'll go into that in just a second. So it's if you want to look up, it's eyeball, like IBOL. You can look up that International Barcode for Life. There's COBOL, the Consortium for the Barcode of Life. You can look up Rockefeller University and Barcode for Life. You can look up the new iteration, which is BOLD, BOLD, and Barcode for Life. That's the newest one with all the databases and all that kind of stuff. So there is plenty of documentation. One other thing people need to be aware of, as far as it pertains to this, is that in 1975 there was a first Asilomar conference. Asilomar is near Monterey, California. It used to be a military base. It is now a conference center where global policymakers meet. It's a very lovely location, on the beach. It's really wonderful. Um, but they make some really horrendous things. So Asilomar 1 was to genetically modify all life on Earth. And you go, you know, why would they do that? Because if they tweak um, they cannot patent something from God in God's creation. But if they genetically modify you or any creature or plant, then they can patent it. And so that's what we're seeing is this change of ownership right now. The second SLMR conference, the only media to cover it was Rolling Stone magazine. And on the cover, it has, and I do have this if any of you are interested, you idiots, that Congress opened basically Pandora's box about genetically modifying all life on Earth. So they were the only media to cover it. 2010, there was the second Asilomar conference. That was the geoengineering element. And in the days to come, before like January 1st, I have some homework to do. There's going to be another breaking story about that's equally as big. So if any of you know a big outlet that's interested in breaking this story, I need it to really go big. That the geoengineering component and how what that plays. Many of us have suspected, but how does it plug and play? That's what is unfolding right now. And then I think it was I got to really look. It's either 2017 or 2018. There was on October 31st, this is the same day. And it was actually about the same time in Poland where blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain was, unveiling to the world. There was an artificial intelligence framework that would manage everything. So, okay, in a nutshell, why am I against, with this background, why am I against testing? One, it is a blood harvesting operation. A lot of people said, oh, no, no, no. I got this from the United States Federal Register, who said it was a blood harvesting operation. Now, people are coming forward, and there is documentation that it is a blood harvesting operation. And what's so dangerous about that? Well, I just want you to think for a minute. Imagine the most evil person in history standing before you. I don't know who that might be. Hitler, Stalin, Mao, whatever country you're in. Would you go naked? I mean, absolutely naked before that evil person. Would you do it? God has given you in your genome various protections, various secrets, your unique identity to Him. And you are basically turning it over to pure evil, like satanic evil, to do research, science, rituals, form weapons against you, modify you. And none of us really knows how far we have to be modified before we are no longer human, and we turn into a synthetic entity. So that's the first thing. The second thing is many of the tests, I would say a good portion have a dose of the quantum dot and the hydrogel. And once again, we're going to talk about the danger of that, but that is a DARPA operation. They wanted to put chips in people's brains. But they didn't want to have to do surgery, so they developed this gel. And this gel is a DARPA thing. And if you follow DARPA at all, you know they love swarms. You can get a visual of what is happening inside your body if you go on YouTube and watch the slaughter bots. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's about drones and what they do. But this is actually happening inside of you as well as a drone operation outside of you. So that's the and once you get it into your body, this hydrogel and quantum dot, it grows, and I will go into great detail on that. Um, but for now, just realize it grows. There is no way to get it out. And then you are magnetically tagged. Um, in about 2006 or 2007, um, there was a military operation. I think it was Operation Chicken, but I can't remember. Anyway, it was DOD, and they could actually tell who was vaccinated and tagged by satellite back in 2006 and 7. So they don't really need all these tests and different things because they can tell, because what happens is you are implanted with this beacon, and once again, it becomes part of you. And yes, if you have offspring, then is transferable to your offspring. It With this new um, nanotechnology, they had to come up with a new dye. Um, I did do an extensive article on the fetish that the world powers that be have with dyeing things. And it's Hoder, A Time to Die, DYE, and that's at shepherdsheart.life. And you can see a lot of the biological experiments across the different disciplines use dye. They needed to come up with a new dye when genetic modification, and they started to introduce that in the 90s to the world. They injected into these genetically modified organisms a fluorescent jellyfish dye. Um, and then they could tell if the genetic modification, if the offspring had it, then it was a successful, that genetically whatever they altered was passed down to the offspring. And but they couldn't do that with this new nanotechnology. They have a real vibrant color scheme. So we will be talking about that, during this conversation as it evolves. But those are the three reasons that I am firmly against testing. It is a blood harvesting of your DNA and your genome to be done whatever they want to do with it. And if you trust the powers that be, I have a bridge to sell you. What can you say? And the hydrogel and quantum dot, and I get a lot of questions. Does it matter if you get the nasal swab or the cheek swab, or the blood? No, it does not matter. But if you did get that nasal swab where they pushed the Q-tip way up, um, they were getting it very close. There's only a very slight, um, just a sliver between that and your brain. Now, quantum dot and hydrogel, by its very nature, it doesn't have to be pushed up into your blood-brain barrier. It will naturally do that. We'll talk about this in this next section, but it naturally will go there and swarm and cross your blood-brain barrier anyway, but they want to fast track it like warp speed, um, if you get my meaning. So that's my answer to that about the testing.
Brilliant.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, I would like to ask another topic so that we can discuss a little bit. My name is Hartmut Schumacher from Germany, and my podcast has the name Go Your Own Path. And I want to encourage people to get their own perception and take the courage to see the things with their own eyes. And this is very difficult as the many people, especially in Germany and all other Western countries, have gone through the process of demoralization done by the Soviet Union. And so the people cannot see the truth and the reality anymore. And my target is that the people get the courage, get connected to their heart again, and have the courage to see the things. And I found a couple of days ago a very interesting article about Microsoft that they have invented on the 20th June 2019, a patent which is a cryptocurrency mining system that leverages human activities, including brainwaves and body heat. So, and this was in June, and then in October there was the event 201, and the idea is that the mining of currencies will be done by activities by the human beings. And can you tell anything about this? Because I talked to a professional and he said the patent is there, but it's like the quantum processor, it doesn't work. So we would have 8 years' time. Do you see it in the same way, or do you think it's already so professional that it will come in the next couple of days, a couple of months?
I believe that the quantum dot and or hydrogel has that capability to hold information. It's a communication center, and yes, it can be a form of currency. And that's why I give this example of The Last Enemy. It talks about that, and it actually shows that. I mean, it's fictional, but you get the idea. So the idea all along was originally they were talking RFIDs, putting that in, and people like in Europe, some places in Europe, they thought it was real cool to get the grain of rice RFID implanted, and then they could go to the bar and they could pay for groceries and stuff like that. That was primitive. This is what they were really had developed all along. They knew that that was just a distraction. Those RFID chips could be dug out. You didn't think it was cool. You decided to change your mind or whatever. You could get them out. This hydrogel and quantum dot, you cannot. And I will discuss that in probably agonizing detail in shortly. But yes, you will be able, it'll hold your health records. These passes that were going to be issued are only temporary until everybody gets dosed with their quantum dots and their hydrogel. And then that will be your travel passport. And those that do not have it will not be able to travel. It's going to be how you pay for food because of the pathogens, money, credit cards, all that, and it will also be a system that verifies who you are. And so it's the perfect system. And so, yeah, it's coming on board, and it's coming on with this new thing that we're all facing here soon.
So it looks like that they can also see that, for example, if someone is meditating or trying to make a connection to the universe, they can see it. And for example, if they don't like it because the vibration is not the one they want to have it, then they can eliminate it. Very simple.
Absolutely. And that's part of the breaking story that I'm going to be doing, but I'll give you a hint. So when I started to really dig into the journals and what they were saying, the first thing that I noticed, I'm a lot like Dr. Carrie Maj, and I noticed patterns. And what I saw was what they were trying to do with this when they put the quantum dot and hydrogel in us is to change the magnetism of the atoms in our body and the spin. And so right now what I'm doing is some deep research of, okay, what does that mean to us as biological creatures? I mean, they're changing us at the molecular level. And so what are going to be the physiological effects? I'm looking at the spiritual effects. But then we have a complicating factor is there is a convergence of the cycles of time that God initiated at creation. And those are all converging between 2020 and 2050. And that is our magnetosphere is collapsing. The last time was the Younger Dryas. Um, we have a historic high cosmic ray coming in, and how, if they change our magnetism as a human, how is that going to play in these new solar cycles and the collapse of the magnetosphere? What is that going to do to us as biological creatures? So I'm doing some really deep research on that. um, there are texts about it. The governments are aware. I don't know if you guys have seen the Adam and Eve book or read it. It's about 100 pages. It was done by a CIA agent, and it was classified. My dad basically told me at 5 years old about this, and we had very interesting guests to our house. But it was classified, but recently it was declassified. So you can go to the CIA reading room and download your own PDF of the Adam and Eve story. There is a prelude and there's a postlude, and it's kind of sanitized, but you're going to get an idea of what the CIA that they knew and were aware of these cycles that would be coming upon us right now and increasing. Um, I just, on a side note, I will say that I moved to Montana, and my husband and I bought a off-grid place, log cabin on the top of a mountain at 6,000 feet. But it was funny because all around us were cabins and they were all owned by CIA. And that's because of this book called The Adam and Eve Story that talks about the pole shift. And, it's the repercussions to the world when the pole does shift. And for those of you that are aware, we're in a magnetic excursion right now. We're in a holding pattern. But what happens is there's a holding pattern and then there's a jerk. Nobody really knows what triggers that jerk. And then it will significantly bump down. And what can happen is that the world can, and there is geologic ice. All the disciplines verify that this did happen before. Um, it it it's going to have like 1,000-foot wave of water, and it will start in the Pacific. It will wipe out Seattle, that area, over the Cascades. It's going to kind of jump over where I am. That's why they considered this a safe zone, and that's why the CIA had people here. And then it kind of goes over, I don't know what that's called in physics, and then it'll take out the Midwest, it'll take out the East, it'll continue to Europe and wipe out that. It'll just keep going. That's when the megafauna and megaflora were destroyed in the last extinction level event. And right now we have begun the sixth extinction level event. And all cultures, or many cultures, and most religions believe that this is the last cycle. Um, in they point to their own religious texts or legends, and so they believe that evil is going to be cut. So this is Satan has only a limited time to get his job done. So I hope that it helps answer.
Yes, because now I have the courage to share a very provocant theory. Because the North and the South Pole, normally we think that the North Pole is in the north and the South Pole in the south, so Greenland and Antarctica. But in reality, the North Pole and the South Pole are so close that, for example, the gap of the sea between Australia and China is only the gap between them. And the elite in question mark thinks that there is a correlation between carbon dioxide and the magnetic field. And as they don't have the possibility to go in the shift, because we are soul beings, we have the possibility to connect us to the Creator, but they don't have it. They try to establish around the world an artificial magnetic system in order to hold this as long as possible. Do you know anything about that? Because I only know it as a theory so far.
I don't, but I think because I'm digging into this and doing deep research on this whole thing about magnetism, I'm sure it's going to come out. About the only thing I know at this point is that when the pole does shift, the magnetic pole is going to be in what is akin in the United States to the Bermuda Triangle, only it's known as the Devil's Triangle, kind of in Indonesia. That's all I know at this point, other than just, I keep track of at uh, the World Magnetic Model 20, let's see, it was 2020, but it was released in December of 2019. So at this point, I don't have that, but I might be coming across that. I do believe what we're seeing play out before us right now is an alternative or what I call a synthetic reality. So that would go along with what you were saying.
And another question is what I have is because, in my opinion, there are already possibilities that nothing of these things need to happen, because there is, I say, the water technology. Yeah, the water is is the most modern and most advanced technology what we can get, because water has the possibility to copy a human cell completely. Yeah, and why is this knowledge? Because it is there. Because I see it in the Aquaman, and I know it from different sources from different countries that the technology is already existing. Why is this not possible to get this technology? Because there are good people and there are bad people. Yeah, and I think we are normal people, and we have to do. At the moment, it looks like we do the whole job, but I think in the behind the scenes, there are many good people with power working on the same thing. So the question is, where are they?
What I'm seeing is like I've never seen evil to this degree, and water is going to play an important part, and that's going to be part of my breaking news for like January 1st. I am watching them restructure every single facet of Earth, and including water. And the thing that turned me onto it was, so I was at a friend's house in Washington State, and I was reading my journals, and I saw that they had restructured light. And so I started digging into it. I haven't even been able to finish it because all this is, takes deep research. Then you have to get the word out, and it's just like, and you have to live life. You have to be balanced in what we're doing. Otherwise, you can just get lost in a dark place. And so we have to do things to be a human. So I did find overwhelming evidence that they had restructured light. Well, I can tell you that I will be sharing evidence that they are restructuring water, and they are using it for evil purposes, not the way that God originally intended. So water is on the docket, and even air. There was a consortium of it was California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, possibly Idaho. I can't remember who the original players were. It's about 20 years old, this consortium. And they actually sold a quart jar of air to Beijing, a quart jar of air for $950. And when they did that, that set the precedent that soon we will have, at some point, we would have to pay the United Nations for the very air that we breathe. So everything is being tagged and put into this blockchain, and it has value. And we're gonna, in the end, when it's totally rolled out, we will be paying for everything. And then we will be told when we can live and when we die, It's kind of like that Soylent Green type thing, when our carbon credits are used up, we go into the big screen TV room and they usher us out,
Thank you. I have many questions, but we can do it later on. I give the chance to someone else. Thank you so much.
I'll wait for my comment later as well. But I just want to let you know that people from all over the world are watching right now and making some, thumbs up, hearts up, and some of them we know, some of them you don't know, and I keep trying to send it and share it because others want to have the access. Okay, so continue.
I guess I'll go. Celeste, honored to be here. Hi, guys. I'm Steve Fierro. My podcast is Awakened Mind, and I've been watching you, and I really like your videos. I kind of want to go back because you worked for FEMA. So my question is like 3 in 1. But one part is, I was watching all these, recreational facilities that there's apparently 850 FEMA recreational facilities spread around the United States, and that there were videos of people driving by endless plastic containers, could be large coffins, whatever. And I just want to know if that was all real and part of FEMA, and did you see it, and can you acknowledge that? And then also
let's take one at a time.
Okay.
Just it helps me to be clear. So I am not aware of any of that, and I did not participate in any of that. What the things that I was told, well, one, I have to be very careful because it is illegal. They made it illegal about 4 months ago for anybody that had any government position to talk about anything classified or unclassified. So I have to be very careful with what I say. I don't represent the agency nor the views of the agency. It's been over a decade since I had anything to do with the agency. So all I can say is, from my understanding, it's public reception centers. They're public reception centers that happened. That name came about after Hurricane Katrina, and it was in case of a nuclear incident, that children would be at school, and if the environment was not safe for any reason, then they would not be reunited with their parents, but they would go to facilities. Of course, then there's also, if you are a resistor, you would not, this is unlike World War II, it would not be a labor camp. It is a depopulation center. And so that's all I can say about that.
Okay. And then in one of your recent videos, you were looking at the World Economic Map, as you're like an expert at, and you're signed up and you get updates. So this was about sort of the food and going to a metric system. And I've also heard where you're saying we're going off a GDP, gross domestic product type of economy. That's part of the reset. And they want to do it like what Hartmut said, where I forget the word you use, but it's some sort of like human quantum economy. But my main question is, I know everything is inverted satanically and everything's a Trojan horse, but in the things you showed me, they talk about feeding 9.8 billion people and small farms, and we know Monsanto has control of the seeds. and all that. So in some ways, we always know they make it look good, and it's, you know, for the betterment of humanity. But the things in that video that you showed, it did look like, are they, you know, we're talking about depopulation, and they're sending in this Trojan horse of feeding, you know, 9.8 billion people by the year 2025 or whatever it is. So there was that, because, you know, can we trust any of it? Or, you know, is this really that they want to basically start eliminating a large part of the poor population? And secondly, you mentioned a blockchain baby being produced. And that sort of like really was, I was like, you know, if anyone has read Brave New World or familiar with that, are you saying that they created a human being, the first blockchain human being? Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, so you know, blockchain is a contractual agreement. I don't know honestly all the details of the baby if it was laboratory generated, but I do know the military, and you know, still continue taking military courses. And there's something called the old humans and the new humans. And that is really important for the Agenda 21 2030. Now they have moved up their timeline to 2025. So all the global people have moved up their timeline from 2030 to 2025. So how does this pertain to humans? So what they have to do is depopulate all the old humans that are not um, that were created in the old God system. And so that's why they have to get rid of all of us, with a special emphasis on little children, because they're considered the remnants. They're considered, you know, they're going to grow up, but they're not wanted. So in the next 4 years, we are going to see horrendous depopulation operations. They only have 4 years to do it. What is a new human? A new human is not created by a man and a woman. It is created in a laboratory. It is enhanced and augmented and part of the quantum B system, New World Order, whatever you want to say. Um, that is the definition by the military of the new human. So what we're going to see are these operations to in many different forms. Vaccination is one. A year ago, August, I told my followers it was the first year of famine. And they kind of looked at me like I was a loon, because they could still go to the grocery store. You could get anything you want. There was, you know, it was abundance, or the appearance of abundance. But what I based that on was a United Nations report that I discovered, that said that they wanted to start selling food by the 1/1000th of a calorie. Just think about that for a minute. 1/1000th of a calorie is how you will buy your food in the future. And DARPA, on the other hand, about the same time, DARPA came out and said, we want to sell food by the molecule. So I knew that there was going to be a disruption in the way that we purchase food. And that happened with the pathogen. And if you go to the World Economic Forum, you see the spike protein and the disruption all around of every single thing. And one of those things is how we buy food, what we consume for food, what type of food. The first in the United States, the first laboratory generated food factory is under construction, and you are not going to be getting the amount you are. The Russians did a really great study that said basically we need 1,500 calories a day to survive. That's the people in the concentration camps probably had a little bit less than that. But what they're talking at 1/1000th of a calorie, and by the molecule, we are going to be getting, I'm going to turn my phone off because it keeps dinging here. Um, it We're not going to get that much food. I saw recently that in probably the next year, you are going to be allowed um, 2 ounces of a laboratory or insect protein a week. And then another UN document said that you would be allowed 35 grams of other food, including a carbohydrate, no sweets, um, 35 grams. That's not very much. And you would only be allowed that every 21 days. So basically, uh, it's it's unbelievable. And then we're going into disasters that because of these cycles of times and earth changes and cosmic changes, um, and the coming grand solar minimum, food is going to be harder to grow and access anyway, even if we just put the UN and the elite over there, it would still be a challenging time. And in those times, a person needs 3 to 6,000 calories a day. And, we'll be lucky if we get a couple calories. That's why I'm really, really emphasizing to everyone, please grow your own food, even if it's one plant to start with. I have potatoes growing in my windowsill right now. Um, because you don't snap your fingers and learn this overnight. It's a trial and error. Learn wildcrafting. There are weeds, as long as they're not sprayed heavily. We can talk about that whole agenda too, but that are food and medicine and can supplement your diet. They Our meat supply is in peril. They have genetically in 1995, when people were just starting to get computers, I went to the UN Convention of Biodiversity, and on their front page, I do have a hard copy of that, but it's been purged at this point, that they were going to deploy a military term, genetically modified organisms throughout the world, into the forests, especially because they knew that people during the Holocaust ran to the forests and other persecutions, and they wanted to take that off as a source. And so about 2 years ago, it was either this year or last year, but I think it was last year, I started to see they put up signs in Montana that chronic wasting disease, and that before you ate any animal that you killed, you should send the brain in. Um, for those of you that are not familiar with chronic wasting disease, it basically eats holes in your brain. It's a slow process. If you were a hunter, you would really not necessarily know that that animal was infected. It's a prion disease, or that's what we've been told. And that then it would start to do the same thing to you. It's a slow and agonizing death. In humans, it's called Jacob crucix.
Jacob's.
and and there is a fish version of it. So they've kind of and then to top it off, in Montana, our governor just signed this summer that they can do um, they are releasing biological weapons in the wildlife of Montana. So, for what purpose? I don't know, but this was at the governor's order. And so you're not going to know which one of the animals, if you're hunting a deer, has contracted this biological weapon. And how was it done? I don't know. I just saw the order from the governor, and then tried to get the word out. So we can't be sure about our meat supply. But if you did have a farm yourself, you could grow your own food. It is challenging now. It's hard to be a shepherdess in this environment because their feed, their water, you guys all know the geoengineering, it's like a toxic environment, and it's getting more toxic by the day. But that said, the food that you grow is going to be much cleaner than anything that you can get at in any commercial store or even at a farmer's market. It is my recommendation at this point, after January 1st, if you buy anything at a store, and I don't care what they say, it's organic or whatever, if you even have access to a store, that it is a depopulation tool. You might as well drink poison or shoot yourself because
And that's because,
it's
is that because there's hydrogel in the food?
um, and other things. Yes, absolutely. There is, it will look like food, but it isn't food. I can kind of tell you a primitive uh, example, just for those that find this hard to believe. So, when I was a young child, a family favorite were what did we call them? I don't know. They were pastries, and they were stuffed with real flaky pastry, and it had whipping cream inside. I keep thinking scones, but that's because I made scones yesterday, but it wasn't. I can't think of the name. Anyway, so, and I hadn't had them for years. And it was a real treat for us to get those. You know, you got them maybe once every year, maybe once every 5 years, but it was really special. So one day in the 80s, I saw these, oh, horns, cream horns. That's what they were called. Um, so I saw them at my grocery store, and I go, and it was going to be Shabbat, so I was going to have a lot of people, and I entertain. So I bought a package, and they were really expensive. I mean, it was like $8 for four of them, but I thought, well, I'll just cut them up and slice them up, and it just brought back a ton of wonderful memories for me. I get home and I find out that this cream horn had a little dab of cream on the end, but it was all hollow inside. It was just like they were charging this unbelievable amount, and it wasn't even what I thought it was. It was the image of what I remembered, but it was not, what I remembered. And just think if that's going to happen to every single thing. An apple is not an apple, a piece of meat isn't a meat, rice isn't a rice. It's going to be, I could show you stuff that would curl your hair. I've got tons of documentation on that. So,
Gotcha. Thank you for answering that. Roy, you go next.
Yeah. I suppose a lot of people, because of the last 8 months, they're terrified. After listening to this, they're probably frozen. You're well connected. What is positive out there? Like, can you see people that are fighting this and making change? Because obviously we are to get messages out, but more needs to be
absolutely.
done.
So, my dad did set me on his knee at 5, and he was in naval warfare at the time. And he said, "This is going to happen on your watch. Be ready." And so I just acquired all these skills, nursing, organic farming, making my own medicine by wildcrafting, cooking from basics, how to store things right, how to make things. And nobody wanted those skills. I mean, I've been doing this for a long, long time, but nobody was interested. Now, this year, people are interested. They are open. They are networking with one another. They're learning how to make bread. They're learning how to store things. They're canning for the first time. Um, it's so exciting and beautiful to see. And then there's wonderful relationships. Like, I wouldn't have met you if this hadn't happened. I wouldn't have met Grace if this hadn't all happened. And so we can celebrate being a human. And people are open. People are open. A lot of people over time had gotten jaded from their religious establishment, but now people are open. Whatever faith that you follow, people are open to it because they want hope. Um, and they know that this evil isn't right. And so this is going to be a bit shocking. So, one of the things that I learned where I worked, let's just put it that way, is that 3% of people will do something all the time. It means they're consistent either in their faith and their whatever. 7% of people will do something once or twice, like write their senator or do something proactive. And this doesn't matter what discipline, or is it faith or volunteer organization or government work or whatever. But 90% of people will do nothing, even if it means the death of themselves and their loved ones. And so as we try and wake people up, or there's only so much of us, we have to realize that those are the whole hard cold facts. And so it is better for us, and I've tested it. I trusted it when I learned it. I tested it in all different disciplines, sectors, and it was just the way that it was. So what I'm learning to do is to reach those people. Really, my focus is the 3%. And then if I have time, I reach out to the 7%, and the 90% that aren't going to do anything. There's not much time. We can waste a lot of time. There's people that will consume your time, and you don't have time. I mean, there are people that will do something, have kinetic activity from the information that you're getting. And I mean, it's really hard for me as a shepherdess because I want all the baby chicks to come along. But the hard, cold reality is not all the baby chicks want to come, and that's their free choice and free will. So we have to focus on really heavily the 3%, and in a circle, then the 7%. And then if we reach somebody that just happens to be out there in the 90%, and then they want to do something active, then that's great. And I really encourage that. But we can't have false expectations, and all of us are just limited in time and resources, to reach out to people that really will not do anything with the information we give them. So what I encourage people is to share, like Grace, share. That's what we do. And so I hope that answers your question.
I mean, unfortunately, a lot that aren't awake, they've been conditioned to behave like that. There's a load of subliminal messages in all the programming and everything. Like, what I'm really trying to find out is, you're connected at high levels in different organizations. I mean, I've investigated the EU, the UN, every single thing is corrupt. The whole lot of them are infiltrated. But what I'd like to know is there a percentage that are in there that hate it and want to help us? Or are they all bad boys?
So I was called out in 48 hours because it was going south, and I knew it. Of course, I went into it because the Holy Spirit had told me to go into it. So I already knew the organization before I went into it, and that it was a season. I never could have foretold how it would end. But I doubt that there's very many people that are good, that are there. And to be perfectly honest, with the testing and with the vaccine coming, as it consumes you and destroys your biological and spiritual self, even those, if they go along with the testing and the vaccine, you will see them change before your very eyes. So there's not many, very few.
May I ask a question?
And regarding telling people what's going on, sorry, they're just the last one.
Okay.
Regarding telling people, I mean, Event 201, Agenda 2030, all these different things? Is that to instill fear in people that every single thing is available, what they're doing? Even all the, I mean, I've listened to your David Icke interview, and all the different things are on websites for us to see. So it's not as if they're hiding these things. Is that to instill fear so that we get the wrong frequencies?
Yeah, they want us to be fearful. Most definitely, they want us to be fearful. But I believe that when we have the information, we can live above fear. And that's why the spiritual element is so critical, because they say that there's nothing new under the sun, but that's in the physical. In the spirit, we have unlimited potential. And so when we press into our spiritual self, um, I believe that we can overcome anything. And if we lose our lives in this, I believe we have eternal life. So I'm going to be with Jesus myself for eternity. So, this life has been wonderful, but eternity, I'm not going to have to battle this beast system, this new world order. And so I'm kind of at this point looking forward to it, where I didn't used to kind of have that viewpoint.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to ask something concerning the depopulation, because there is a homepage which is called deagle.com, and this on the website it is gone already. But there was this page in which they show the decreasing in percentage in every country. Interesting to note was that there were 3 or 4 countries which had no decreasing. I don't know. I don't know it for sure. I think one was Pakistan and one was maybe Indonesia. I don't. Malaysia,
Russia, I think, was another one.
And Russia has only 1%. Yeah. And my question is, how does it come that the population is so different in different countries? Yeah, because this is what I didn't understand so far. Or do you have any clue, or do you have any idea why there is so a gap? For example, Germany, UK 70%, and then, for example, Russia 1%.
So there have been beta tests, and it's the same way in the United States. So different states would beta test different things, and it was kind of a patchwork thing, so that if they did like a mass experimentation over the world, people would wake up and notice. But, if they did it in a small community, if they did it in a state, here and there, every country has their own set of beta tests. And so it follows the same model, so that nobody, people get thrown off. Like, why isn't it consistent across? Well, there's things such as sovereignty, reporting, how do these nations interact with the United Nations, and, the accuracy of their reporting. Don't forget the numbers that we see. When they start throwing numbers up at the beginning of the pathogen, I didn't even look, because it's fake. I mean, there's so many deep fakes that you really cannot believe the numbers. But I do believe that different countries had different beta tests. But I believe in 2021, we are going to see, with the Great Reset, the fracturing of sovereign nations, and this amalgamation of all of the countries of the world under United Nations or elite control. I don't know, as the United Nations, World Economic Forum, that whole, like, those guys, and their invisible policy makers that we never see. So I believe that, 1, we can't trust the numbers that you're seeing, and 2, that in this next year during the Great Reset, which they're really ramping up for January, you are going to see a breaking of sovereign countries.
And easy question. Trump is not the one who wants to rescue us. Yes. So
I
because
like
we saw that the deep state is split in an old generation and a new generation, but they have the same target.
It didn't really matter who got in. So
Yeah.
when I would sign in where I worked before, you sign in under the president's picture, and there's like this 30-page contract. And, there was a time that I would have to sign in under Obama, and it was really disgusting. I didn't like it, but you had to do it. Um, but then when it was Bush, I felt better. But then through many experiences, I learned that it didn't matter, that with Obama, it was going to be in your face. With Bush, it was behind closed doors. And that's basically the agendas moving forward in all of our countries. The only difference is it going to be in your face, or behind closed doors, these decisions? That's the only difference. So I know that many people don't like that message, but that has been my experience over the years. And I have been in some of those closed door meetings where everything was decided that should have been decided by the people, and it wasn't. It was all pre-decided. And what we saw were dog and pony shows, smoke and mirrors, bread and circuses.
Okay. So there is no country where you can say, okay, let's go this way. Wow.
Spiritually is where we have to, our refuge and oasis is spiritual. And that's why nourish your spiritual self. Don't get so caught up in following news or whatever. Ground yourself. People go, how do you go to such dark places and be happy and joyful and have peace? And that's because I have passions about my organic gardening. I live in a vacation destination. I have beautiful mountains jetting up with snow-covered peaks. I watch the wildlife. I take hikes. I have a little dog, and I love to cook. I love flavor. I love hearing birds. So there's many things I'm passionate about, and that keeps me balanced for the dark places that I have to visit.
We said my lady and myself, we have established a meditation center 20 years ago, and we said a beacon of light stands in the darkest and the most dangerous situations or places. So this is, and there are in the spiritual world, they say also that there are only 15% of the people on this planet have souls, and 85% are not. And the situation is they are looking for the 15%.
Yeah, that is part of this blood harvesting, I do believe, is that they can tell through our blood where we are spiritually. And then they can form weapons to aim at the pineal gland, the hippocampus, and the various organs in our body that help us connect and communicate, spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like to agree with all of your comments. But right now, let me just respond to Harmut's, because I believe that we just need that little percentage, and that will give us a quantum power and expansion effect. Okay, because when it is that, we have to go back to that pre-matter consciousness where we originally were created. And so when Celeste said, "Oh, that it wouldn't be Trump, or it wouldn't be," I really don't believe that there's be one person who could come and save us. And that's why for all of us, no one is coming to save you. So each of us have to do the work of saving ourselves. And we really have to start taking command in everything and in all little ways. Because again, I believe that we came in here, we decided to come here as we have a contract, our souls have contract, and said, okay, or I'm going to come to this lifetime and do a podcast. So all these little things. And when we say what we want to do, we better do it out of heart, out of our heart, out of our love, so then we could be our best messenger. And when Celeste and some of you said that the creation, right? I um I, I don't have all the research, but do yourself your due diligence to study on your own, because I think one of the secrets to survival is studying, research, conversations. And they said that if the world, if the galaxy, if it was created from that eternal perpetual consciousness, it doesn't mean that creation cannot happen again and again and again. And I think last week, right, Harmut and others, we said that one solution is creation. And just like for mothers who have delivered natural birth, and for those who didn't deliver natural birth, just raising a child, is that we go through so much difficulty to conceive, some of us, okay, just a lot of difficulty giving birth. And when you give birth, it could feel like you give your life. I always remember why some mothers will say, I should have killed you when you were small. When we were misbehaving, is because of that so difficult path. And yet, out of that difficult path, there's always something there that gives us hope. And for me, coming together like this, sharing that, hello, let's go back to our original self, or our original blueprint of infinite, consciousness. Although I'm sure people will ask this question: if God, and whatever you call that infinite God, source, or infinite consciousness, how come these satanic things are happening? So and I know most people say it can't be, but now I believe it is happening. It can happen, but should we continue to let it happen and not say anything? That's a whole different ball game, right? Okay, so I'm gonna let Steve in, and feel free.
Just got a question, Celeste. I know we're all interested and intrigued as to get onto the vaccine question, how vital and important it is, and for you to go through it. But just before we touch on that topic itself, no introduction needed for Klaus Schwab, of course, but he's been coming out a lot lately, more so than in the past in his previous books and all that as well. And he's been coming out saying, and generally, as we know, when these people, they give us clues and they actually tell us themselves as to what is coming ahead. But the one thing, amongst other things he talks about, I mean, you're talking about the food supply and the chain and all that, which has been breaking down in lots of places, lots of evidence in New Zealand, different places around the world. But what the question is he has said that what we see at the moment, i.e. coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever we want to call it, he said this is absolutely nothing. We have seen nothing yet. The next big one we have to already prepare for is the massive cyber attack that's waiting around the corner from us. And from your information, background, and knowledge, could you give us any insights on what you vision and see, or how close we are to basically this cyber attack happening? Because it's not just a case of the internet maybe going down for a few days or a few weeks. It's people who have been storing food in places around the world, supplies and all that as well. They're all going to completely, unless they've generators or some other way of powering it, they're all going to go down as well. And all the food supply has been stored, hibernating and stuff, that's all going to go as well. So what's your insights, or can you give us anything on the cyber attack situation before maybe we move on to the vaccine?
So basically, I have been in meetings, and the powers that be are hardened. So they are not going to be affected. Even at the nano level, those nanoparticles are getting their energy either from the environment, or if they're inside of us, they're harvesting their energy from us. So in the event of a cyber crash, it would more than likely be the average person like you and me. It's not going to be the powers that be. They are hardened. And that goes for the same for electricity. They have redundant systems all in place. so it's just going to be the average person, the man and woman on the street around the world, um, that is going to be without the technology, so to speak. And then, of course, when they come back online, it will probably be a blockchain vaccine, hydrogel, quantum dot. It's going to be a new system for you to even enter into. And it's important for everybody to realize that blockchain is a contractual agreement. So every single thing that you do or participate in is a contract. And so you really need to know that. So gone are the days that, handshake deal, or, I give you a pound of rice and you give me, some beef or whatever. They want everything accounted for um, and monitored and dispensed by the government. See, that's why I gave you guys the background of um, the traceability and national animal ID, because they feel that everything, it belongs to them. It's kind of like my dog. I love her dearly. She's 2 years old. She goes, "What's mine is mine, Mom, and what's yours is mine." And that's kind of the philosophy that they have. And I go, "Where did you get that, Miss Zippy?" I didn't teach you that. But just the very nature of her being a dog, and she says, "Well, Mom, that dessert looks really good," or "That steak looks really good, Mom, and that yours is mine," because I wolf mine down in 2 seconds. So that's kind of where we're at.
And how close do you feel it's going to be in 2021, or have you any
I
insight?
think we're going off the cliff on the January 1st. The indication. So usually I get a update from the World Economic Forum once a week. They have now bumped it up to twice a week. And it's like, "Oh, Katie, bar the door. Here we go. We're going off the cliff on January 1st. They're talking Great Reset next month. And there is a new Davos. Remember, all this really started where we were starting to piece things together with the Davos meeting last year. God help us, they've got another one scheduled next month. It's a virtual one, but it is going forward. And so like I said, I believe that it's going to be a totally synthetic world, that it's almost like a parallel universe. It's going to be, if you think that 2020 was weird and strange and hard to negotiate, 2021 is going to be unbelievable.
The show has just begun.
Yeah.
So before any of the panelists say anything, let me just share with you some comments, and then any of you can respond. Okay. So it says, George says, "Do we expect civil unrest for the near future?" Then he also said that what Celeste is saying is true for all the critical infrastructures, but not for the general population. And the governors are already saying that would shut off water and electric for people who won't conform to mask and vaccines. And he's from United States, so just any of us can respond.
So it's absolutely accurate. Everything from turning off utilities to, they're going to play hardball. During the precursor of the mark, I worked with a representative and senators to do a bill that would prevent such a thing. Of course, it didn't work. But in our initial, my business partner and I met with the representative and his aide, and we said, okay, if push comes to shove and the government says, if you don't comply with us, if the state government doesn't comply with the feds, and the feds say, we're going to shut everything off, we're going to shut off all the money, we're going to shut off the help, we're going to shut off disaster assistance, no funds for highways and all this. And he looked at me and he said, quite frankly, we would have to cave. So that's basically where we're at. Um, you are going to be laid siege to in your home. Many people say, um, well, there's in a lot of states, if you're not compliant, you can be removed from your home, whether you are a renter or an owner. There are laws around the world to remove you from your home under communicable disease. And you're a threat and a menace to society by not complying. So yeah, it's very real.
and I'll read. There are many people watching us in YouTube and sharing their comments and said, and yes, one of them said that he because he watched that Celeste and Ike video, and it led us to our podcast. And he says Earth chances Planet X might supersede strict informants and enforcement of this. As I then I am going thinking more on the side of weather modification. And Robert Sickler says hi. He's a louder podcaster. And then Dragon Slayer 6 says, noticing a lot of these virus breakouts are in food processing facilities. Then he further said, you really need a biblical view to understand the evil thrives for a short time in the end times. It's in the book of Revelation. If you are not a Christian, you'll not understand this. And then Kearney says the Lord Jesus Christ warned the people that these hard things would happen so they would not be offended when they do. But if you don't believe the Bible, this will not help you. Then he says, Dragon Slayer says, I try to only buy local, small town here in Canada. So thank you for all those sharings and comments, and thanks for doing whatever you guys are doing. To all our listeners and viewers, whatever you are doing in your own little way, whether it will be just for yourself or for your family, whether someone knows it or not know it, thank you, because that is what we need to do. Okay, grassroots, mass education, empowerment, enlightenment, and then practice. Day to day life, daily habit is crucial. No one can take any of our spirit away. No one can take our creativity away unless we allow it. And it's okay. That's part of their creative satanic, what they sign up, but we could just match it in such a powerful, loving way, like what we're doing now.
So I've got one insight in one of those comments is the reason that the meat packing plants are closed down is part of the disruption for the food supply is to put in artificial intelligence and robots in the place of humans. You see, and then I just saw this week, the first articles coming out that doctors and nurses and primary care providers are going to be replaced this year by robotics. So this is all by design and plan. So they are getting rid of our ability to take care of ourselves. And it's not business as usual. What they're doing is trading in the jobs that humans used to do and turning it over to a robotic world. And so that's what's going on.
Are you talking about Agenda 2045?
The closing of the meat packing plants, and then the reason that they did that was not for the pathogen, it was to transfer over and put in robotics in place of humans. So
yes,
because humans have, they're frail, they can get disease, they can get the pathogen, this and that. So we have to have robotic everything, robotic agriculture. If you dig under OPAD in the World Economic Forum, you can see that the whole plan is to replace all of our jobs with robotic jobs with relatively few actual people working in any type of thing. As far as militaries, just so you know, The Navy is the leader of the pack. They want to be, they will be the first military to go completely autonomous, no human in the loop. So that is the goal for the Navy. And the other branches of the military are not far behind. So
There, the 5G has here also specific frequencies, also concerning the power which will have. And I think the last stage of the 5G is not for human at all.
yeah, not for human. Not for
Yeah,
human.
that says everything.
Celeste, is there any what?
No, go ahead,
Okay.
Steve.
Oh, sorry. There's a theory that if you take the vaccine, this is more of a spiritual thing, that, and if you believe in cloning, apparently they already have the ability to, take someone's consciousness and transfer it into someone else's, into a clone, as long as that person is sleeping, I think, or alive. So there's a theory that if you take the vaccine, once you take it, you're vulnerable to having, you're not being in the normal death and your soul going to the other side sequence where there's a story that perhaps your soul could be captured. Have you heard anything about that? And that the big decision is, if you really stand your ground, that you might have to choose whatever comes without taking the vaccine if you don't want that possibility.
I definitely believe that that is the case, that your spirit is taken, that you're no longer human. You're no longer a human that is created in the divine image of God and breathing the breath of life, that you become a synthetic entity. That's not immediate, but it does happen fairly quickly, and you would not be a human, and you would not. My personal belief is you would have eternal life, but it would be an eternal life in hell. I believe all life is eternal. It's where are you going to spend that time? Are you going to spend it with Jesus Christ, or are you going to spend it in hell? And these are evil people. And a lot of people are coming up with excuses. Oh, I have to take it for surgery. I have to take it because I have to work. I have to take it for like my children to pick them up at school. The problem with this is then they write me afterwards and they're begging me. They said, after I took the test, now I'm ill and I can't get better. And I can only offer them limited hope, because as far as I know, there's no physical way, and that there's consequences when you had the option to do your due diligence and learn. Feigning that you did not know is not going to cut the mustard. You're going to either be on the side of God or Satan. And that's what we're deciding when we monkey with the test, but more importantly, the vaccine.
I see. So is in the dialogue about a new earth and an awakening, do you believe that essentially we get past this and the people that are consciously aware and maybe vibrating at a higher frequency go to a different dimension, and that this earth continues in a very 3D, stuck in 3D place? Spiritually there's a divide, or not? I'm just curious.
So I believe in the biblical worldview, which says that, there's going to be Armageddon, this big showdown between God and Satan, and humanity's caught in the middle. They've taken one side or another. And then Jesus Christ will come back. He'll reign for 1,000 years. Then the Satan will rise up again, and that for a short, brief time, and then he'll be defeated in the lake of fire. And then there is a new heaven and a new earth. And I do believe that we will be, those that are on God's side will live live in a like a paradise for a time in a physical body. The Bible talks about a new body and so a new vibration and all. But then I'm really, and I don't know this for certain, that there at some point we will not be a body, because it also talks about worship in spirit and in truth as he is spirit, so that at some point we're not going to even need a physical body, and that it will be spirit to spirit, not, we're not God, but we will be not need a physical form any longer. But I don't think it's not going to be like it is now, most definitely.
Okay, thank you.
I like to share what Celeste said when you said you're good in seeing patterns. Well, I look at things that way as well. So for those who watch movie a lot, so before I wasn't paying attention when, they have a lot of superpower movies, and then one of them will have half the hand, half the leg. So then, because they portray in movies like that, and you really like get enamored, like get attracted, that, oh, it's so nice. Maybe you want a part of that as well. But I keep thinking that that could be just one way that they're just like indoctrinating, putting it in our mind, conscious mind, and eventually subconscious, that it's okay. If we put some nano things on you and you just act like a robot, it's okay. And then I remember when from our exchange of email, you even told me, go and look at the advertisement for, is that one of the State Farm Insurance, right? So, and one of the insurance advertisement, that it's a motorcycle, a guy living in the motorcycle, and he's half motorcycle and he's half human. So it's all of this coming back to my critical thinking. And same thing as when we love this movie. The whole world loved this movie. E.T., right? Extraterrestrial. But then I remember one African American brother, when I was studying, I just beginning to study Know Thyself to Heal Thyself when I came to United States. He and some of them made a comment, isn't that movie interesting? It seems so easy to be friendly to an extraterrestrial being rather than to your neighbor who might have a different view than you, or to a neighbor who may look different from you. So all of this, like, geez, we've been duped for all those years. And I think a lot of these satanic things happened way, way, way before. And so for Steve's concern and question about, I tend to be an optimist. I always try to see that power in us, that we are part of that. Our foundation is consciousness, and that consciousness is pre-substance. That at some point, no, I don't believe that all of us will survive this. Only the strong in spirit and in their heart will survive. So I'm sorry. So if any of you wants to survive this, that's what you have to reflect inside. And maybe some may keep thinking about ascension, but I remember one of the person I follow through is, before even ascension, go to incension. Go first to yourself and see, what do you believe in? Okay? And I'm going to let Hartmut in.
Eric, I want to share one information while I was listening to you. I have listened that, I read that the evil side is on this planet for 6.5 billion years. I don't know whether this figure is true, but this was a figure of what I read. And so this is a very long time. So and we are only 50, maybe 70 or 80 years here, and we have to conquer against someone who is since 6.5 billion years here. And this is so this is the way how I see it, and we have to be quite good if we try to conquer this.
Yeah, and it's just in the what's 19 early or late 1800s and more so early 1900s, that it's literally the so-called powers to be are putting it out there. They're more brave. They, as Celeste said, they want it faster. So it's right out there. So if us, we just have that critical eyes. And again, if I share to you little things that I do for myself, when I put my eye makeup, I say, let me see the things that I need to see. If I put anything on my lips, let me speak the words that I need to speak. So all of this, I kind of connect it there. And when we talked about the water, why? We're 99% water molecule. So those who don't have good intentions know that and will use that against us or for their benefit. So they can keep restructuring the molecule because that's where emotions store. That's where, and emotions are that heated part that is the pre-substance. And eventually, so it's like even with the water, and they said that before we keep talking about the water outside, keep thinking about our water inside. Okay, so so many things we can do day to day.
So you're talking about water. I'm just gonna, I don't know. You see,
Because it changes all the water molecules.
do you mind if I share screen for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. So
I don't know
I'll
if I
try.
do anything.
I'll try pushing it and see if it works. Screen share. Then I hope I can select the window.
Do you have also
Let's see if
specific
we can
knowledge about
do
water?
it with no
Celeste?
technical
Yeah,
issue.
just a sec. Just a sec. Okay, hold on. Okay, so I have to go back to here. I just had it up here a minute ago. Now I have to. So here's part of what I'm going to show. This is what's coming in January. I don't believe that this one's out yet. So this is going to, yeah, it's not, I guess some of it is out. Here are some of the things on water. This is all about water. And let me go back to, so this particular thing is all about water and how they're going to restructure water. All sorts of things from disinfection to hydrophobicity, to everything, the nanoparticles in the water. So I just thought that I'd show that to you, that they really are working on this stuff. And then, of course, if you go to the World Economic Forum, they also have a section on water and what they're doing to water. Uh-oh, they couldn't see the screen. Oh,
Yeah,
well.
so, but go ahead. Keep just describing it to us. Give us the highlight.
So basically, it was a big water drop, and it just goes into showing what they're doing for restructuring the water, just like they are restructuring the light and restructuring all of creation into the image, a satanic engineered world, or what we might think of as a parallel world. So
is this also the technology where the water has more levels than the three, which we already know? For example, we know gas, we know frozen, and we know liquid, and they have much more levels than we know. Is this the technology?
No, it's more about breaking the water down to the molecular level and re-engineering it.
That's from the DARPA side, or that's from the World Economic Forum?
It's not only DARPA, it's like researchers, scientists. It's just a collaborative effort. across the research network. So
on the other hand, I'm sure there's a small group of people, because I know one of them who continue to develop, as I began with our power when I said truth crushed the earth will always rise. Because if you notice it from the history, like Rife, right, Tesla, one or two or three will always come out beyond what most normal people would know. And so our human divine nature always trying to come up with something that we can realize. And again, for us who are open to solutions beyond our narrow imagination, beyond what they keep telling us, we will find it. We find it because it is there. The solution is there, but it is, of course, they have to find a way to cut it. Just like we know some active advocates or doctors from eons never survive, but they leave some legacy. They leave something that now other people can move on and work on it. So it is out there. Scalar waves technology, etc. And plus, so since all these are happening from all angles, I think we too should approach it in all different angles, but always remembering that the divine creation does not sleep, does not stop.
And that we can impact by our very presence. So I'm reading some things on energy healing and energy medicine. And it's really exciting because just your presence next to another person, if that person is deficient or defective in some way, like maybe they've got a heart problem, maybe their circulatory system isn't good, maybe their brain isn't working so good, maybe spiritually they're not in a good place. Just your presence alone, you standing near them, you don't even need to touch them, just standing near them begins to heal their being. That's why it's so important, even in this time of this social isolation that we're supposed to do, that we do interact and we be present and with other human beings, because that's part of our healing. It's part of our bioelectric field that we each have in our body. And when I think about this restructuring of the water, I think about the work of Dr. Emoto, and when he thought good thoughts, loving thoughts, positive thoughts, the water formed crystals that were very intricate, very detailed, very beautiful. And then he had another set of water, and he would say, I hate you, and evil thoughts, and curse thoughts, and whatever, I don't know. And it basically, the center, it was like the detail melted away. It got holy. It was like this mass twisted thing with no detail. So just no matter what situation we find ourselves, whatever assault comes upon us, even in restructured water, or maybe relationships or whatever, if we think loving thoughts, positive thoughts, and just stand firm in our faith, that's going to bring that healing not only to ourselves, but to all those that we come in contact with. And all of you are influencers, whether you're either going to influence for the positive or you're going to influence for the negative. And I believe that the people listening to this right now are influencers for the positive. And so we can bring that energy and healing to the world.
I would like to come back to the future, the close future again, concerning the tests, and for example also the the vaccination, because it's a messenger RNA vaccination, and the situation is for a messenger RNA vaccination, you don't need a needle. It's only it's only nasal. It's only you don't need it. And my question is, why do they do, or why if they do all the tests, which is already by the hydrogel and everything else a kind of vaccination, why do they need the other vaccination as well?
It's more concentrated. It's more concentrated. So it's going to get the job done faster. So I believe that that's why.
Oh, okay. Because I think it's the same thing. Am I right?
Pretty much. I mean, there's many more elements to the vaccine that the test does not have. But as far as all practical purposes, some of the damage is already done. So are we ready to go down the vaccine rabbit trail or not yet?
Yes, please do. I think.
Please do.
Yeah.
Okay, so
let's double check. Hold on. Let's double check again our whatever we need to mute so that I could hear. So because your word again, people need to. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start off with aborted baby cells. And of course, many of us should find that really offensive in the first place. But recently it's come out that it is aborted male white Caucasian, specifically cells. Now, what does that do to the human body? Well, I did some research because I thought, well, that's kind of strange that it's so specific that it's only white male Caucasians. So what that does in a body is, one, it will impact your immune system. Two, it creates a psychological stress in a human body. Those particular cells are kind of responsible for psychological stress. And they also induce and amplify fear. So that's pretty scary. So they've got this all metriced out. They know that that's part of it. So what else is in this vaccine? So you've got your basic humanized mouse. Now, what's a humanized mouse? A humanized mouse has human organs, human immune system, human blood. It's basically a human in a mouse suit. And so those cells are going to be going into this vaccine. If you're a Bible believer, in the beginning in Genesis, it says, do not cross the species. And realistically, whenever cultures began crossing species, like they say the Atlanteans and different other civilizations in time, cross species, there was a judgment and a destruction. Another thing are humanized plants. So what's a humanized plant? Well, a plant has a vascular system. It's similar to our circulatory system, but they've injected it with human cells. So it is a plant that has human proteins floating in it. So they're going to add that to it. Then I'm going to save the quantum dot and the quantum or the hydrogel for last. There are also sterilization chemicals in the vaccine to sterilize every man, woman, and child on the planet, so that the only way to procreate for these new humans going forward is in the lab, so that there's no mistakes. There's only lab-generated new humans. And then there is something that is from a mandate from the United Nations. There is a cocktail. Now that word should ring a bell in all of your ears, because when President Trump got the pathogen, we were told that he got a cocktail of drugs. What were these drugs? We were not told, but now we know that the cocktail of drugs is to combat non-communicable disease, or NCD. And the United Nations does not want um, chronic disease, the burden of chronic disease. They say it burdens the healthcare system, it wastes money. So, what they're going to do, and the different companies are going to put their own proprietary blend or cocktail of these non-communicable disease drugs in each vaccine. So what is it going to fight? Heart disease, stroke, obesity, diabetes, things like that. But we're not going to be told what is in there. And then there's the different adjuvants that we're all familiar with, that, aluminum, mercury, who knows what else they're going to put in there. So now let's go back to the quantum dot and the hydrogel. So I'm going to take you in the Bible to Genesis really quickly. So when Moses goes up on Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments, we all think of Charleston Heston carrying down the granite, tablets with the writing on them that we saw in the 10 Commandments. But it's in Jewish tradition, it has always been two sapphire cubes. And we can find evidence of this from Genesis, where it says, under the throne of God was sapphire. And in the Hebrew Jewish tradition, the writing was not on the outside, because then Moses could have graffitied and written anything. The writing was actually, as the sapphire was formed, inside the sapphire. Okay, so that kind of gives you the biblical background. Of course, Satan always wants to counterfeit what God has. So I ran across in the scientific journals sapphire nanocubes. There you go. And so what is a sapphire nanocube? So it takes a substrate, and then there's a process called lithography. Lithography is writing, my friends, and they are writing messages. They are writing, they're signing it like in ancient times, like in Michelangelo's time and different other times. When an artist did work, they either put their signature or their picture in. So they are writing messages in these nanocubes. And what else they're writing, I believe, is a transfer of ownership. As a matter of fact, I had somebody on the inside that said, when this transfer of ownership comes about, I will let you know. And I believe that person was taken out. I did not hear, but I did read this about the lithography. So you can type in nanocubes lithography, and then it's sealed, it's encrypted, so that it's secret. It's a secret message. And okay, so that's the start. So there's all these little nanocubes in the syringe that you are going to get the vaccination with. And what they do is they go into your body and they assemble. There are 33 classes of robots. Each one has a different mission. And we can go into that at some point. And then they start to swarm. That's a DARPA signature. So they swarm throughout your body. These robots go into action, and depending on what they're told to do, they have cantilevers, they have clamps, they have all sorts of stuff. There's pyramids, there's all sorts of stuff. Anyway, it holds this synthetic, it's a fusion, it's a nanoparticle, and they've learned to fuse biological life and robotics with a hollow belly inside. And at some point we can when I learn how to share screen on this, we can do that. And so they are cleaved to your blood cell, maybe an organ, whatever, and they propagate and they swarm just like the drones in the slaughter bots. And then that goes up to your brain and it takes over your brain. But moving back, what I want you to think about is think of a water balloon. So the balloon is kind of small, and then as you add water, it grows, right? So this is what is basically happening inside your body. What is happening is the hydrogel or quantum dot is harvesting your fluid that God gave you to be healthy and makes up your biological self. It's harvesting it. And so it is growing like the water balloon inside of you, and your biological self is withering and dying. It's just it's just doing that. Then it crosses the blood-brain barrier and it takes over your brain. Now, do we have an example of this? Yes, we do. A mother contacted me after I did my hydrogel um, video, and she said, contact me anytime, day or night. My daughter died of this. So I did contact her. It was East Coast. And she relayed the following story to me. She had a baby in 1986. She was a poor family. They were a poor family. And she dutifully got her children the vaccines. I can't remember which vaccine it was, but I think it was a booster. And then her daughter began to wither away. Well, her daughter needed brain surgery. So, of course, that was a long process. I'm fast forwarding it so you don't have to hear all the details. But she ended up in the office of Dr. Ben Carson, the neurosurgeon who ran for president in the United States. And he did brain surgery on little Julie. So Barb, the mom, asked, what did you find? And he said, I don't know what I found. All I know is that her whole brain was glue. Every nook and cranny was glue, and it went down her spinal cord and throughout her nervous system. He was so distraught. He called in and collaborated with other doctors. It was written up in the medical journals of the day, but nobody knew what it was because it was a secret black ops project. This was the alternative to invasive implanting chips in people's brains by surgery. This was a beta test. So little Julie was born in 1986 and she died in 2003, unfortunately, from hydrogel. So that is the first case. There are people now getting the AstraZeneca. They're in one lady has put up an SOS on Facebook, and she has these terrible sores on her feet. Now, to be um, a participant in one of these studies, you have to sign a disclaimer holding the vaccine company not liable, that you realize that you're a guinea pig, blah, blah, blah. She probably got a minimal amount of sum of money. I don't know what the particulars are. Most of the time you are forbidden from talking about that. But what she did is she got these sores afterwards. And so she's terrified and she can't get rid of them. She doesn't have money. So she's started a GoFundMe to to get the finances to get somebody to help her. The problem is she asked for this. She volunteered for this. It's in her body. And there is no doctor on the face of this earth that is going to be able to help her. I don't care if she had billions of dollars, she would not be able to get any treatment. This is not going to go out. A lot of people say borax, this and that. And I've heard some things, and maybe possibly a cleanse might do a tiny bit, but it's not going to stop what you have let loose in your body. And this is actually predicted in the Bible. I believe it's Revelation 16:2, that people that do get the mark of the beast get these noisome sores, just like what is happening to this woman who is on Facebook and GoFundMe. Um, and there's other people having severe reactions and health problems from both the testing and the vaccines. So that's basically a 101 on the vaccines and what's in them. Of course, we've got also enzymes like I can never say it right, luciferase, which is, all these things are deliberate names. So there's a lot of components in it. Yes, there's maybe 200 different vaccines in process right now, but they're all going to have the same basic format, because that's what the UN, I mean, this has been planned for a long time. So are there any questions about that, the vaccine?
I'll
Do you
share
have
first. I'll Harmut, let me share first a comment from a viewer, and that's from Jill McGregor. He said, "We, our bodies, are the highest technology ourselves. We need to keep our minds strongly focused on that. They're only trying to harness our frequency and our deepest connection to source because they don't have that, especially via the shot in the arm and other methods. The shot in the arm has serious stuff in it, which Celeste already gave that details. Like the norm, if you could even call the previous ones normal." Okay, that's it. Go ahead, Harmut.
one question? Do you know anything about the Sputnik 5 vaccination from the Russians? Because this is a vaccination which is not accepted by the United Nations or by the WHO. And for this reason, I thought this would be not fit in this cluster.
I think at this point, I would not trust any vaccine. And actually, there's deployment of these substances now going into food and also medications that people take, and also aerosolized into the air. So this is a real war, and this is a real assault. This is actually an edict against biological life, and they intend to change it. And as this one astute viewer is noted, is a harnessing of our life, and evil wants to harness our life. So I am not familiar with that, but I am seeing that they are branching out because they know that there's a big resistance to the vaccine. So they're bound and determined to get it anyway into us any way possible.
So also by chemtrails, I guess, because we already have 50 or 50,000 particles, nanoparticles in us, as well as phosphorus, so that they can make 5G, 3D hologram, 3D analyzes by the 5G antennas. Is that correct?
Yes, the most of the nanoparticles in us right now are sensors. They are sensors, but they are not aggressively, they're not swarming and taking over our body. They're just kind of sitting there reporting to the powers that be. And you were correct. The frequency is what gives the nanoparticles their marching orders. That's how the particles know what to deploy. In this hollow belly of these nanoparticles, they can deploy poisons. I believe that the recent Russian poisoning was a beta test of this. They could deploy a bacteria, a virus, a fungus, some hybrid thing that we don't even know yet. And also they can deploy explosives. And that information comes to us from the NASA Strategic Issues Warfare 2025 document. There is a sanitized version and there is the full version. I think the full version is 114 pages. So if you look, do a search for that, get the 114 page one and make sure that it includes the information on SmartVest, and it will tell you that it is akin, these small nanoparticles have like equivalent of multiple TNT, so they can actually we could spontaneously combust. So
do you know whether these sensors in us, do they work with scalar wave technology or do they work with Hertz frequency?
Scalar, but not God's, but I don't think, I believe that there's verses in the Bible that help us overcome. Like I claim that I am a new creation in Jesus Christ every moment of every day, and that he is constantly regenerating me. That doesn't mean I should go out and drink poison and be a fool or take the vaccine. I have people that say, well, Jesus is bigger than the vaccine, so I can take it. Well, it says if you take the mark of the beast, and I can't say categorically it is or not, but it has all you can't buy or sell without it, all of this type of thing. That so it says if you take the mark in the Bible that you drink you are drinking the wrath of God. So he's not going to help you if if this is the mark of the beast and you deliberately take it. You're lost. Your name is blotted out of the book of life instead of being a human. So
the question why I ask this is because there are, for example, mosquito net which contains silver, and with this net you can block Hertz frequencies. Yeah, but I found out that you cannot block scalar waves.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, because as I was doing my homework yesterday for like this breaking thing on the magnetism and all that, I actually learned that Tesla actually became electromagnetically sensitive. He became, there's people that are electrosensitive to electromagnetic. They're actually allergic to it. That at the end of his life, he actually became one of those people. Of course, they didn't know in his day. Now there's the whole field of environmental medicine. And we were seeing patients in the 90s that were electromagnetically sensitive. But it was interesting. And they also, in the book that I'm reading right now, we're talking about that if you put yourself in a Faraday cage, and to block out frequencies from the outside, that it actually interfered with your biological the functioning of your body, because you were not getting things like the Schumann resonance, the frequency that the earth gives out, and these other biological fields that we come in contact, the normal ones, like for instance your biological field interacting with my biological field, that was not happening in a Faraday cage situation. And so these people suffered a lot, and I'm documenting exactly. They had heart problems, they had sleep problems, and it really interfered with their biological function. So
it is already this case that, for example, at the moment we don't have the 5G technology completely, but they have changed the normal antennas in 5G technology. And interesting this, so far as I know, the frequencies of this 5G goes in correlation with our iron atoms, and so we are not able to transport oxygen through our blood, and then we have problems to breathe.
yes, And then that's compounded by the swarming of the nanoparticles in our body, which is what I believe the early patients of COVID had, was not really pneumonia. And the doctors and nurses were saying it didn't act like pneumonia, but that it was a swarming of the nanoparticles creating masses that were pneumonia-like, but not pneumonia. So it was like a drone swarm. It's really important you guys watch that Slaughterbots to see that, because it gives you a visual about what's happening on the molecular and tiny level inside of our bodies.
It's fascinating how the questions from our audience comes, because before even they can hear what you have to say, because George said, isn't 5G part of the equation to activate functions in the vaccine?
Yes. And actually, it's not only 5G. This whole thing is, there's a unique planetary alignments unfolding in the next little, over the weeks and months and years to come. And in the research papers, they are actually calling upon the stars, and their sweet influences to potentiate and amplify the effect of this vaccine. So that's why they want it deployed at certain times, because there are influences of the stars. It mentions this in the Bible. I know that for me, I have insomnia, but when it's a full moon for 3 days, I cannot sleep. I can be in a darkened room where there's no light whatsoever, but my body, for some reason, it just knows that it is the full time of the full moon, the day before, the day of, and the day after. And I just throw up my hands, and I used to fret about it. Now I just get up and work or whatever. I'll read or pray or whatever. I don't get myself all worked up. So it does actually influence us. I am gotta dig back into those to see it's not astrology. The stars, the planetary alignments actually do impact our biological life. And that's part of this magnetism study that I'm doing right now.
Okay, thank you. And let me share again what Dragon Slayer said on YouTube. And I want to keep sharing it, because this isn't about us. We want people to keep being engaged. So he says, I will be in an ethereal frequency. I believe it's all about frequencies. Our natural ethereal frequency is being taken over by the man-made evil frequency. Our pineal gland is our receptor to the natural ethereal frequency. They want to go override this. And I'm glad you mentioned about Celeste, you just mentioned about the moon. But lately, okay, what I may have to say, I don't know, maybe other people heard it already, but I'm going to keep studying it. I just heard from someone that I'm following, and who has gone out of their body experience, and who went into their, uploaded their consciousness, and he says, and been studying that, and referred to the Dogon tribe in the African tradition, and says the moon is not organic. The moon, so they have a whole teaching on before the moon, because they said the moon is being used to influence us, because they know now that the moon can influence water molecules. And at one point in our world's existence, we were mostly water. So there's all these theories that we even came from the ocean, and things like that. So again, as one or two people I respect would always say, the truth is stranger than fiction. But then, would you rather live in lies than truth? So anyway, so the moon. So all those moon aficionados, I don't know, I'm just sharing you what I'm trying to understand and be that critical learner.
I want to add something to this. In the African mythology, the mythology goes more than 20,000 years back, and there was a time with no moon, and we had here a very springtime. And with the creation of the moon, which has a connection to Saturn, then we got the male energy on this planet. This is known by the African meteorology. And the situation is that, we have to face the situation, and the frequency of the human body, and in order to heal the cells, is 432 hertz. This is the frequency of the DNA in order to get a healing process. So there is music. If you can find music with 432 hertz, then it's a healing process which can support the DNA in reconstructing itself.
Did you say 430 frequency?
432. 432.
42. Sometimes I write down notes and share it to the public. 432 hertz. Okay. And
just because you were on about the 33, and we know the Masons, everything is 33, and you mentioned about 33 on the bots. Like both Steve and myself, we've got rifle machines. That was in like Royal Raymond rifle. Surely the frequencies can be used to actually terminate this. If we have to try and look at if somebody has got the injection or have got the PCR test, like whether you reverse engineer anything rather than saying, okay, those that are awake, push to the side. I mean, there has to be ways. There is more Teslas out there. There is some incredible engineers out there that are fighting this. So, like, I want to look more on the positive side instead of saying, yeah, you're on that side, we're this side. I actually believe that everything is able to be stopped, reverse engineer everything.
So I do once again have the biblical worldview that says that if the days were not cut short, that there would be no flesh left alive. And I believe after looking at the documents and what's flowing into my e-box, that is a very accurate statement. I believe that Satan tried once before in Genesis 6 to taint the blood supply, and he was unsuccessful of tainting the whole blood supply, thereby relegating humanity to the dark side. But this is his final chance to do that, and so that he's given free reign, and then we have free choice, and we can make conscious decisions of faith. I do believe that there are things that can probably mitigate some of this, but it's all new. And there's, you're right. They're very intelligent people out there, and where there's a will, there's a way. But I'm really thinking that so the frequency, and the Royal Rife is on frequency. I don't know what the frequency would be for a nanosynbio. So it does have a cloaking device, because that's why our body does not recognize it as foreign, so it doesn't attack it. It's the frequencies coming in that give it the marching orders. We could probably manipulate that a tad. But the best, to me, solution is, if you know that it's going to change you from a human to a synthetic entity, why even mess with it? Why go down that path to start with when it's so, yes, there's going to be consequences. No, you may not be able to go to the cinema. You may not be able to go to the grocery store like me, but I'm a human, and I want to be a human. I want to stay a human. I don't want to be a synthetic creature. I don't even want to go there. So
okay, sorry for being negative, but the situation, but at the moment, for the normal people, the solutions are quite limited if they work from the 1st of January with aerosols, and all our food supply will be poisoned with this kind of stuff.
That's why I believe in biblical promises. Like, okay, so I mentioned the regeneration, or I'm a new creation. I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. Um, Different, and you can confess. You can, if you accidentally took the test, and you later found out that it was dangerous. Maybe you didn't know when you got the test. Uh, then you could confess your sin. That doesn't mean you won't have biological or physiological consequences for taking it. And you know, there was one other thing, but it just went right out the brain. um, let's see, what are some of the other things? It'll come to me and then I'll just blurt it out. But it was along the same line of some of the hopes that we have in our faith. But it's what happens sometimes.
If everyone wakes up, then that's the solution, because basically we're allowing whatever's happening, whether we believe it or not. So, you know, the solution lies within each one of us to see what's happening and to mentally, as in prayer, just say, I do not consent. And that's almost enough to stop the frequency from lowering.
And to give you the courage also to say no and to endure whatever consequences. I would much rather endure some physical consequences than to get this thing inside of me and have it running havoc inside my body and taking over.
Yeah.
We
I
need
plan on it not being mandatory and it not happening. So that's my vision.
So mandatory is really an interesting word. So you need to know, at least in the United States, and this is going to be, they love word plays. They just love semantic games.
Of course.
So the hallmark of all federal programs in the United States is a voluntary program, but it's a coercive voluntary. So it's like not paying taxes. You don't pay your taxes, you're going to go to jail, you're going to have everything confiscated. So in a way, yes, it's voluntary, but no, it's not voluntary. So I believe that that's the type of voluntary system that we'll have, that, okay, if you won't voluntarily get the vaccine, you can't live in your house, you can't buy food, you can't have access to medicine, you can't have a job, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, there's a way to challenge the IRS, because taxes are voluntary, but you cannot be a person or a citizen. You have to be a living man or a living woman, and you have to know how to speak, and you have to authorize your birth certificate and file a UCC 101 and do all these things, but then you can't exist in the system, like you said. So they hang that over your head. So who knows? But I mean, consciousness can shift the timeline as well. If enough people see the bullshit, then that's all that's needed. Every breath can change a timeline.
And let me share again. Let me share one of the comments again. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. I know it's more than an hour, but I know that others would want to be with us, but they had other events to attend to. But now they're catching up, so we can continue. And he is a Shaolin master, and he says, this is from Shi Deru, is that various presentations are freedom of speech for all to discern and see. Various vibration of energy for human frequency interaction and connection is good for all to wake up. So, and it boils down to our choices. And here, the choices here, people are speaking up, people are coming together from all walks of life. So as listeners and viewers, so what's your choice? As Steve said, you can't do a lot if you're no longer a human being. Go ahead.
Are you talking to me?
Anyone? Chris?
Oh.
We're talking about consequences and all that. I mean, well, what is life in itself? It's choice and consequence on a daily basis, and that becomes negative or positive. And I know what, like, we're unveiling the truth and getting information out there, and that's as much as we're trying to play our part in all this. I know a lot of it sounds like, doomsday and negative and all this kind of stuff we talk about, but obviously we have to talk and get this information out to people first. It's vital. I know plenty of people that want to put their hands over the ears and, oh, don't tell me, it sounds awful, I don't want to know about it, I just want to get on with my life. But I'm telling you, it's not. You can't just get on with your life. You have to know this information, this stuff out there, because it will affect you either directly, indirectly. It will come from you one way or the other. But just touching on what Roy was saying there as well, like a positive for, like, we're all awake. None of us are going to take the vaccine. And for people watching at the moment, I don't know how awake they are, if someone may be sitting on the fence at the moment, but we've taught a lot of vital information today as well. Like me personally, these agendas, as we know, have been, COVID-19 happened was not a random event or anything like that. This is well planned in advance by all sorts of measures and areas we could go into, but we just wouldn't have the time to get into them all. But for people that are listening at the moment, like, to give them some bit of hope or some bit of, like, what can I do, or positivity to the world, me and what I've studied and looked at for years and years, I believe that they're ending up in a train wreck, for want of a better word. So I do believe the wheels are starting to fall off it. I believe that's why censorship is going through the roof at the minute, because they're scrambling as much as they can to the opposition, which is always against them, to get any information out at all. That's why maybe the grid can go down, the electric grid, and all that will go down overnight. And like you're saying, it can come back up, and we'll have to sign in, and it'll be the case of, the blockchain, which is all planned as well. The World Economic Forum, loads of them have been talking about this system for a long, long time. But I think, as again, for people watching, that there is hope, there is positivity. As David Icke and many other people have said, at the end of the day, these psychopaths who are controlling all this, and we can go back into all them and who they are and all that. I mean, like, Bill Gates is just a frontman for him. He's the name, but he's just a frontman for what actually is going on, be it the Rockefellers or Rothschilds, all the people that are there in the background. But as David Icke and many other people have mentioned, years gone by as well, there's so few of them. As he said, you could even fit him inside in one room. There's billions of us. So I know the way we're sounding, it's like the few of them have basically the control over the billions. And yes, it's been very obvious in the last couple of months. The thing that's frightened me is the complicity of humanity in the last couple of months. That's the frightening part for me, not any alleged virus or anything else that's going on that way. But I do believe that pushing forward on what we're doing and getting information out like we are doing today, and talking about share, as Grace and other people are saying, get it out to as many people as possible. And like you were saying, Celeste, maybe the stuff will go down the 1st of January. But we will keep pushing on as much as we can. And I know it sounds frightening with the food supply and all that coming in January for people, and they're worried now everything they touch in the shop, will there be something infected in it? But do you have anything to say? I know you touched on it as well. For those kind of people, that are not awake, they can't. I mean, it's years since I was asleep, and so it's almost hard for me to get my mind back into those shoes as to how you were asleep for so long. Because when you wake up, it's like sitting in the front in the car. You will never ever look in the rearview mirror again. You'll just keep going further and further down that rabbit hole until you get more and more information. I'm constantly, once I see a headline or whatever it is, I will consistently strip back layer after layer after layer. And I'll always find the money trail. I'll always find the same few culprits again, time and time again. They're all there to be seen. But for people who don't think for themselves, can't open their mind for whatever reason, is there anything you can kind of give to them, positive kind of going forward? Because, I mean, there is billions of us, and there's so few of them.
So be encouraged. You are human. We can celebrate humanity, and that's a really good thing. There are things that we can do to retain our humanity. That's doing random acts of kindness, whatever your gift is. You could be a wonderful artist. Maybe you could do beautiful artwork to encourage people. Maybe you do beautiful song work and lift the spirits of some of us weary people that are in the trenches. Maybe you make a fabulous killer meal. You're great at cooking. I could use you to come bring me over, because I forgot to get something out for dinner today, because I'm working at this all the time, and like today I messed up and I forgot to get something out for dinner. We can use our gifting. I've got to tell you this because it just touched my heart. So one of someone that follows my work, she sent me an email, and it had 4 pictures of beautiful quilts. Now you got to know, I'm a pioneer woman. I live in 1880 lifestyle. I have an Amish wood cook stove. I heat with wood. I grow my own food, and then I preserve it, and then I make it from scratch. So I really am a pioneer woman living a 21st century war there doing it. And so she goes, I would like to bless you with a quilt. Would you be interested? And oh, I mean, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I could quilt, and I've often wanted a quilt, but there's no time when you're working 22 hours a day against all. You guys all know this. And so she offered to make me a quilt. And I thought, now that is coming together. Maybe it might be a simple giving a smile, giving a pat on the back, a book, a poem. I have someone that faithfully sends me poems, and they're always encouraging. So we can reach out to humanity. We can preserve humanity by celebrating being human and not letting those things that would change us from a human into us. We all have to be careful, and we all have different lines in the sand. And I think that we need to respect each other's lines in the sand. Like maybe my line in the sand is very strict, but I want to give grace to you, Chris, because your line is a little bit different. What I'm finding is that right now, since the whole mask thing, people are not very tolerant of other people's lines in the sand. It's either you be a cookie cutter of me, or you're out I'm going to delete you from or block you from my life. And I think we need to give each other grace, that there is this normalcy bias in play. And what's a normalcy bias? It's that we want normal. We like our patterns. We like our routines. I like it too. I would love to just tinker in my garden, take my little dog for a walk, tinker in the kitchen. But, sometimes I feel I'm in a concentration camp because it's like I'm chained to my computer, and war. And it's a multi-dimensional war, and it's asymmetrical warfare. It's like I'm battling in the physical, but there's also the spiritual level, and that's wearing on you. But we have to realize we all have a normalcy bias, and that's where people um, can't see what we're talking about. And I can give you a real good example. So one time I was at the farmer's market, and there were these 2 moms, and they made the most delicious desserts you ever saw. They could have been on the Any Cuisine magazine, the front cover. They always sold out in an hour. And I was always a bit jealous because I was selling soap and creams and lotions and that kind of stuff. It's heavy, and it didn't sell like that. And in farmers market, yeah, it's real busy, then it's quiet, that type of thing. And so I got talking to them during a quiet time, and I just mentioned like just one thing about the regulatory and the things that I had to negotiate in my business. And I got you guys all know it, the deer in the headlights. Like, they didn't catch it. It went whoo right over their heads. But it was providential. It was providential. So what happened the next week? Towards the end of the farmers market, the health inspector comes up to these ladies' booth, and they started grilling them. And the health inspector was this big, burly, masculine woman, and she's throwing her weight around because they like to be better Nazis here than the Nazis. And they said, "Do you have a permit for this? Was it in a commercial kitchen?" And gave him the 3rd degree. And you could see the wheels about the conversation that I had last week. And they knew that the thumb was on them. and they were able to take action. And what they did was we never saw them again. And I felt really bad because these women's desserts were just the most lovely artwork, tasted good, the whole 10 yards. And so it was the consumer that lost. So when you are sharing, and I know all of us that have been in this for a while, we want the fire hose. It's like it's coming at us at every direction, and we're just like trying to get it out. But when we're dealing with people with normalcy bias, drop, drop, drop. And that's excruciating for us. Like, just say one little thing. One little thing. And I mean, you're going to have to duct tape your mouth, I tell you. And if you're a writer, duct tape your hands, because that one drop has the power. If you've ever seen the power of a drop near a waterfall, it will eventually have a hole there and it will carve a rock. But we have to be patient. And in that way, they have time at their level to adjust for it. Another thing we need to be aware of is that there's something called an invisibility algorithm. What is an invisibility algorithm? It's been with us since before 9/11, but it was heavily used during 9/11 and post 9/11. So what is it? So got to get my fingers in the right way. So there's like 4 things that they get our focus on. And as long as they can get the public focused on those 4 things, they can change everything. And that is exactly what the World Economic Forum and the UN did. They can change religion, government structure, countries, the operating system of the world, everything. As long as these people are they're dangling. So right now, what do we have? We have COVID, we have vaccine, we have the Trump election, and I don't know what you want to think of the 4th one. I'm not a big news consumer, so I don't know what people are focused on. But if we can take one of those distractions and show people just like one drop of what's changing underneath, then we have a chance to overcome or override, as it were, this invisibility algorithm. But that's why people are responding the way that they are. And then we've got psyops. Are you guys familiar with my work on Dr. Gorodano, who I have nicknamed fondly as Dr. Evil?
Sorry, no.
So you need to check out his work. It's on YouTube. He just did one last week, and he is evil incarnate. He is a policymaker. He's in the military at Georgetown, professor at Georgetown, major psyops, major neural weapons. He is very brazen. He is so brazen. I every time he comes up, I show my viewers, his newest post, and the newest one was about a week ago. And he basically said, you know what, if you don't go along with the program, I can slip something into your past. It might be in your credit, might be in your medical records, might be in government records. It could be anything. And with the deep fakes, and he goes, you will never know, but people will think you're a lunatic. And he's said this in every one of his broadcasts. He's very proud of it. The neurological psyop. There's also gaslighting. And when the COVID whole situation, they were very proud about now I'm getting a phone ringing. The fact that they were gaslighting the American people, so and the people at large. So hold on, I forgot to turn off. I'm going to turn this off as soon as that it finishes, but I forgot to turn off my phone. So what are some of the other factors?
What's the name, please? What's the name of that person?
Giordano. It's Giordano. And it's best to look at his YouTube's. His first name is James. Another player that you really need to pay attention to is Dr. Philip Osterholm. He is Mr. Black Swan of biological weapons. He does a weekly briefing, and you really need to listen to him. Okay, Steve.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thanks for joining us. Have a good rest.
I think it's 4 o'clock in the morning in Singapore.
Five. I'll see you on another cast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm very, Celeste, I'm very interested in these. What do you call this for? The four invisible?
It's the invisibility algorithm. And if you want to look into it more specifically, and I would be happy to talk about it on any of your shows if you want, it's capital letters, Carver, CARVER plus shock. That is one of the algorithms, and you can explore that. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
I'm thinking about this because many years ago I worked in dowsing, for example, finding water lines and all that stuff. And the interesting thing is every animal and every human being has an energetic field around himself, which is a length of an arm. This is the private field. But if the human body gets in danger, anyhow, by microphones, by mobile phones, or by any other situations, by a knife is showing to my body, then the size of this energy field doubled. And the interesting thing is that in this moment, I think with the cerebellum, with the small brain. And I can only attack or I can only run away. And this is the same what they do with the invisible frequencies, because they bring our thoughts from the cerebrum to the cerebellum. And at that moment, we cannot really think. And the transition, or what us human beings makes unique, is to think with the cerebrum. And all the psychopaths, they can also not think with the cerebrum. And many of these higher people are psychopaths. So because in Germany we had a profiler who was taught by the Americans doing profiling, and he asked a psychopath, "Can you wait a minute? What's the word? Can you grieve?" And the psychopath said, "Yes, if I missed the bus." Yeah. So the situation is they don't have the emotional stability and the emotional power what we human beings have. But to come in the cerebrum in thinking, this is the way how we can maybe find a solution for the situation.
So it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because there is Dr. Evil Giordano is very proud about his neuroweapon programs. And one of these is like Twitter, so they're trying to get us through just one or two words to react. And that reacting is with our primitive brainstem, or some people say it's the reptilian brain. But there's a real neat YouTube to get that idea across if you're trying to get this across to your audiences. And one of those is Mike the Headless Chicken. Are you familiar with Mike the Headless Chicken?
I think a little bit.
Okay, so Mike the Headless Chicken was about in the 30s or the 40s. And that's back when people like grew their own food. And so he went out, the farmer went out, chopped the head off the chicken, and the chicken lived and was walking around and it kept living. And of course, its head was chopped off, but it was, tried to peck with the chickens and it stayed with the other chickens. And so the farmer actually, this is a true story. You can find it on YouTube. It fed it through, down the esophagus he did it with tweezers. And this chicken went into the circus, went on road shows, was in the newspaper, the whole thing, lived for 2 years without a head and acted like a chicken. But it couldn't do advanced, like you were talking about, thinking. It only had its brain stem. So the farmer had severed its brain, but it had the primitive brain stem. So you can watch Mike the Headless Chicken, and that's a good way to get it, the concept over to people that you were having maybe a difficult time saying, maybe you've been chemically or biologically lobotomized. And then really through technology, there is some degree of lobotomy that has been performed on many of the people that are addicted to the technology.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll be signing off soon, and I'll let Roy close us. Okay.
So thank you very much for your time, Celeste. It was wonderful, and we'll all be reaching out to you to get us on your show, and just to take specific topics, because this was a bit deep, but people can listen to different versions of it. What I would like to say, just for different people, because we're all podcasters, we're all trying to get the message out. Just make sure that you share what we've done. Just give us a thumbs up. Comment, because it makes a difference. So myself and Chris, we do a weekly call, we do an update. I also do some with Hartmut. So we're all collaborating, we're all trying to get the message out. Celeste, I love what you're doing, sharing the message. I've seen your video with David Icke. It was very, very good. So just keep doing it as well. And I think by just sharing the message with everybody, there's no point in thinking doom and gloom, because there's definitely more positivity than negativity. And if we just keep forget about the chickens, the headless. I've seen that. I've seen the picture as well. It's actually very interesting. The guy made a lot of money from it, and he was very disappointed when it died. That was the main thing that was annoying for him. So, some people are we used to say it before in Ireland, they're paid from the neck down. So we need to kind of just remove that and get the brains working again and just share the message. So thank you very much. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and we appreciate all the comments that come in. So, yeah, just stay in contact with the different podcasters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.